Republicans, they grieve me. The Democrats, they only deceive me. But the brand new party, believe me, will go rolling up the vote. Rolling up for Wallace, rolling up for Taylor. You want lost causes? There is a lost cause for you. I moved into this neighborhood about 4 doors to the left of us at 69 East 4th Street in March of 1959. It was my first New York apartment, and it was my first New York girlfriend, who has long since become my wife, and I was very, very happy. But I saw these distant things that looked to me like tombstones, and I realized they were housing projects in the distance. And my girlfriend, okay, let me give you an idea of what the economics of this were like at the time. The apartment I had was $40 a month. It was what was called a cold water flat. That did not mean it only had cold water. It meant that you had to share a john with your neighbor who was across the hall from you. The bathtub was in the kitchen.
Yeah.
My wife, who was making costume jewelry and selling it to some extent with some success, both in the Village Outdoor Art Show, and she had some wholesale customers. She had a real apartment for $100 a month. That was a lot of money then. Plus which, she had a storefront on 9th Street that must be now going for something like $30,000 a month. I have no idea, but it cost $50 a month. So for the total sum of less than $200, we had 2 apartments and we had a storefront. And that was 1959. I want to give you a little idea of the overall feel of things in 1959, which you otherwise might not have. For instance, I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk about Esther Rand, and we're going to talk about Thelma Burdick and Walter Thabit and my friend Alfred Chester. I'm going to do all of that, but I want you to visualize St. Mark's Place with only three places of business on it. One was an Italian pasta joint. The other, where there is now a Japanese supermarket, was the Polski Narodowy Dom, the Polish national home, and had a wonderful restaurant, and Poles would come from all over, and they would dance, and they sometimes even had a small orchestra, and they would do the old-fashioned dance. They would do foxtrots and polkas, of course, and waltzes, and the other place of business was Gem Spa, and that was all there was on St. Mark's Place. I want to tell you about the Bowery. My wife and I used to go down to Chinatown along the Bowery. We would walk around the bum. We really had to do that. There were so many bums on the Bowery. This is another age. I want to tell you about this street. There was not a lot here. Mainly, the main reason we are here on 4th Street is that Esther Rand lived in the first building down there on this side, and she was very, very interested in 4th Street. Plus, my fellow member of the publicity committee, and I can't remember her name, was in the same building. And this is why we are on 4th Street at this moment, and why we have another office on 4th Street, which Met Housing was using for a while. I want to tell you about 2nd Avenue, what it looked like. It was a real bustling place. There were not hippies. There were not businessmen that we now have. There were the children of the Jews who had gone to the suburbs, who every weekend they would come in droves down 2nd Avenue to go to the giant delicatessens, restaurants really, Ratner's and Rappaport's, and to go to Schock's Delicatessen and bring food back up to Scarsdale or wherever it was, because they couldn't get it up there. And it was bustling, but it was something that was. I saw that article in the Times about this guy Rapfogel and Sheldon Silver, and they said, we've got to keep a Jewish place in New York. What a joke! The Jews had already begun to leave this neighborhood. I had a lawyer down in Wall Street. When I told him I was going to come here, my father died the year before. I was left the princely sum of $100 a month. I was not exactly a trust fund kid. I was expected to go to work. I said, no, I can get an apartment for $40 a month. I am going to live in the East Village, and it wasn't called the East Village then, and I'm going to be a writer. And the lawyer looked at me, and he and his family had fled to Scarsdale. And he said, if you live there, you are going to live degradation and squalor. And I hope that gives you a feeling of what life was like back then. Okay, I had moved in here, as I say, in March of '59. Just about, I saw these what I thought were tombstones. They were actually housing projects in the distance. My wife was on 6th Street, just east of First Avenue, and we heard that the whole area there was going to be condemned. That is now what I think they call it, the Village View houses between 6th and 4th Street and First Avenue and Avenue A, and they were going to put more of these tombstones up. I came downstairs in my apartment building, four doors down. I saw a notice saying, stop, we didn't use the word gentrification, stop the building, stop Robert Moses. It wasn't a very well written or very persuasive folder. It said, come to the Church of All Nations. I went to the Church of All Nations. I met Thelma Burdick. I said, listen, I think you need better publicity. She put me on the publicity committee, and that is how I began.